This is Hannibal here from the HannibalTV.com with my weekly review of the points I find interesting in Dave Meltzer's Wrestling Observer. There's a lot more that I don't report on that you guys can order the Observer if you want to know everything. This week's they did some review of the 2023 business years for wrestling. The top four largest attendance were AEW All In London, England, number one. AEW actually having the largest attendance, 81,035 paid, over 85,000 total. The second and third were WrestleMania, night one and night two, both around 67,000. Night two, slightly more. SummerSlam from Detroit Field had 51,477. As far as crowds, more than 15,000, WWE had 11 this year compared to only 5 last year. So that's pretty good. AEW had 1 this year compared to 2 last year. CMLL in Mexico, they do pretty well. They had 3 crowds of over 15,000. AAA had 1. Then if you want to get to UFC, they had 18. They're killing it. New Japan 1. NCAA wrestling, 8 crowds of over 15,000. That's crazy. Rising had 2. The biggest draw, the man who was in the main events with the largest crowds, was Roman Reigns for the most times. And in other WWE news, supposedly Roman Reigns isn't booked for Elimination Chamber in Australia, which is surprising. They already have over 40,000 tickets distributed, and The Rock might be part of that one. WWE SmackDown from Vancouver last Friday had 12,000 paid. It came out in the UFC lawsuit that CM Punk. I know everyone says, "Oh, CM Punk is so brave for getting in the cage," and considering it does take guts, but his pay came out for this, and he made $500,000 for his debut fight with Mickey Gall, but he also got $2 for every pay-per-view buy. So he made a total of $1,042,736. I would take an ass kicking for that. I've taken ass kickings as a bouncer for a lot more, but good for him for making so much. Apparently, that deal was only for his first fight. His future fights, he would only get a percentage if he were to hold the championship. But as we know, he only had 2 fights and he didn't do too well. Apparently, Andrade has been pulled out of all of his bookings, which pretty much indicates he signed a WWE deal. There's a story going around that MVP knocked out Chris Jericho at his Rockin' Wrestling Rager at Sea Part 2. Take that for what it's worth. AEW Dynamite from Jacksonville this week had 3,000 fans total. AEW, its biggest pay-per-view in the US of the year, could very well be Sting's retirement match March 3rd in Greensboro, North Carolina. Jim Ross is going to call that match. There's over 15,000 tickets out for that one. Why they haven't made it like Sting's final match in every major city, I don't know. They never really pushed that for whatever reason. Brian Cage has a torn latissimus dorsi, which is why his back was taped up in recent matches. CJ Perry is still dealing with infection issues. Oh, I forgot to mention WWE had 2 house shows last weekend. January 6th in Spokane, they had 4,885. January 7th in Wenatchee, Washington, 3,101. And by the way, supposedly the matches were pretty much exactly the same on both of those shows. as far as how they played out. AEW Collision in Charlotte had 3,800. Meltzer says there was lots of signs for Flair in the crowd, and he got a good reaction even though he wasn't advertised. Sting and Flair got the biggest reaction. Sting was only advertised at the last minute. Flair was not advertised at all. Simon Inoki is apparently the guy dealing with WWE in All Japan, where Harry, the British Bulldog Smith, former Great North Wrestling champion, is back wrestling there. Tessa Blanchard is wrestling full-time now for CMLL and might be willing to relocate to Mexico. She loves it there, apparently. Apparently, there's some law in the U.S. that might make companies where workers depend on money for a living non-independent contractors. The U.S. Department of Labor on January 9th said that companies might have to treat some workers as employees rather than less expensive independent contractors. I still don't understand how WWE wrestlers are considered independent contractors when those are some of the tightest contracts ever. You can't really wrestle for anyone else. You can't do anything without their permission. They own your likeness. I mean, I'm not saying anything against them. Good for them that they get people to sign those. I signed one of those at one point. But yeah, I don't see how it's an independent contractor. Little Cherry, I would love to get Rick Martel and Harris Brother interviews. I am interviewing White Lightning Tim Horner on Sunday. Any update on Virgil? Last I heard, he's doing okay. Someone recently contacted me saying they wanted to donate $2,500 to him. So I hope that person was legit. I put them in contact. And thank you for your tip, Bill Tate.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates.